Okay, so I know this is my third video and I don't have an intro yet, but let's just get into this video right now. So the first thing I want to address is the Common App. Now what the Common App is basically a portal that allows you to apply to around 20 colleges in the US, and it basically just asks for like your personal information, your standardized test scores, your grades in high school, the essays that you need for some of the colleges that you're applying to, and basically just information like that. Now the specific section of the Common App that I want to focus on is the extracurricular activity. So the extracurricular activity section has around 10 slots where you can put in like the different activities you've been in since like 9, 10, 11, 12 grade, like throughout your high school journey. And what people mostly put in this section is like internships, volunteer activities, NGOs, any online courses they've taken, anything like that basically, they try to put in this section. Now, a common question that does come up is like, do I need to put in all 10 activities? Like, do I need to fill that whole section up? And I would personally recommend you to put in the activities that you're passionate about. And the second thing is to look at the activities that you've learned a lot from. Now, I personally filled in all 10 activities, but you don't need to. But I would suggest you try to keep those two things in mind when trying to fill in the activities that you think are meaningful to you in that section. So the first activity that I had on my Common App was a tech startup that I founded with two of my friends called Beyond Status Quo. And it's basically a website that allows debaters across the country to see the other tournaments that are happening, to sign up for them, to sort of participate in them, see the results as the tournament goes on. And it can also be used as a platform to scout talent for the national team because debaters can see the rankings of others on that platform. Now the second activity that I had for my Common App was school government. So I was the school captain in my school, and I basically had responsibilities that involved liaising between the student body and the school administration to host events around the school. So that was pretty much it. And if there were any complaints that people had, then we would work towards solving them. And that was the other thing that I mentioned on like the 50 character limit as well. Now the third activity that I had on the Common App was a research work that I did with Professor Samit Madan from the University of Pennsylvania. He also works at the Linguistic Data Consortium, and it was in the general area of computer science, specifically in natural language processing. And those were like the details that I mentioned in like the character limit as well. But specifically, there are two other things that I also mentioned. One, that I wrote an 18-page paper, and that the second that the grade I got on the paper was an A+. So these are like two tangibles that I left the admissions officer with so that they can get an idea of what I did with all the time that I put in and what ended up happening, like what was the end result that I got. So it gives the admissions officer a better idea of what I started off with and what I ended with. Now the fourth activity that I had was actually started off as a volunteer activity, then it became an internship, then it became a management position at the firm. And the company's name specifically was Meridian Strategies. It's a political consulting firm. At the firm, what we basically try to do is we try to take our clients and get them on the ballot so people can go and vote for them. Ballots, in case you don't know, is basically like that sheet where there's a list of names where people go and they check on who they want to elect for like a position on like in the government. So that's basically the general idea of the company. And my specific responsibility involved using data science to look at demographics across New York City so that we can use that information to tailor create our approaches to clients so that they can get a better idea of where the voter bases are. The other thing that I also mentioned was that I worked with around upwards of a dozen people every single day, and that's because I was working with volunteers, interns, and paid canvassers, or people that were getting paid to go out and talk about our clients so that people could get interested in our client. So that was like the basic idea that I had at Meridian Strategy, and that was like the progression that I had in that company as well. Fifth activity that I had was a bit interesting. I combined two different things under like the overarching theme of finance. So the first thing that I had was that I interned at a private equity and venture capital firm called Instardo, where I had basically two things that I did while I was there. The first thing was I worked with the senior associates to understand risk and how to mitigate risk. So we basically just like looked at case studies of companies in the past. The other thing that I did while I was there was I worked with them to develop a model in Python that assessed the viability of early stage companies. And that's because like early stage companies don't have like years of financials to get an understanding about the company, so we use other metrics. And then the second thing that I sort of bundled together was that I was the team leader of my Knowledge at Wharton High School investment team, which is basically this global investment competition run by Wharton. And I also mentioned that we got top 100, so like in the world. So that was just like another tangible that we had in place. This just came to my mind, but 8.5% of the people that are watching this channel are between 13 to 17, and that's like the age group that really needs like this information for college. I mean, I love the 80% of people that are watching it between 18 to 25, but please come to this channel. This information is for you if you're between 13 to 17, or it might just be the case that you're lying about your age. So that might be one thing, but if you aren't, please come watch this video. So as part of my sixth activity, I had debate, and this was like one of the only activities that I did for all 4 years of my high school journey. I did 2 years of it in New York City at Stuyvesant High School, where I was just a member of the team, and then when I moved to India in Jaipur, I continued being part of the debate team and I became the vice president here. And in the Common App section, the other thing that I mentioned about debate was just like the number of rounds I was in, like over the 4 years, which was more than 100. And then the other thing that I mentioned was just like the responsibilities that I had as the vice president of debate. The seventh activity that I had was also similar to debate in the sense that I started being in the newspaper in 10th grade actually in my high school in New York City at Stuyvesant High School. And then when I came to India, I continued to be part of the newspaper. Ad Astra was like the name of our newspaper. I mentioned like that I was working with 5 departments and 30 writers. So again, like the admissions officer can get a scope of the leadership role that I was in, which basically can help them, I guess, understand me more and what challenges I'm willing to take on. In my 8th activity, I put, again, 3 different things together under the overarching theme of volunteer service this time. So the first thing that I put was that in 9th grade summer, like right before I was going to 10th grade, I volunteered at Kappa Summer Camp, which was basically this place where I helped 20 elementary students as a teacher's assistants in math and English. And then the second activity that I had for like that slot was that I worked with my friend's NGO, which was called Kids for SIDS, where we basically went to hospitals where they had students with cancer, and we basically set up art drives for them. And then the third activity that I put for that slot was that I coached at the summer camp that our school hosted for students that were signing up from like across India. So I taught them debate across like throughout the summer in 11th grade summer, so going to 12th grade. So almost done here, guys. But my 9th activity, I also combined 2 different things under the theme of computer science. So the first thing I had was me teaching Python and Django web framework to students, and then the second thing I had was basically just me developing a system for the school to manage like the club, the chartering process, like all of that handling, all of that information. And then the 10th activity that I had was a summer program that I went to and an online course, both which had to do with computer science. So I also clubbed those 2 things together and put that as my like last activity. Now another section I want to touch upon is the additional information section. So this is basically just another part of the Common App, and this is separate from the extracurricular section that we've talked about most of the video. So this is basically just another place for you to talk about anything that you might feel you haven't been able to in the rest of the Common App, or you can like use it as a place to elaborate on things that you mentioned in the past, but you want to focus more on or show another side of you through the detail that you're going to provide. So I personally did this, and an example I can give you is for the Knowledge at Wharton High School Investment Competition, the KWHS competition. What we did was we put together 20 financial ratios and we put them together to make one composite score. So we didn't need to analyze like lots of different ratios. We had one aggregate ratio that gave us an idea of the financial viability of a company. And what we also did was we used machine learning to analyze trends in the stock market. So I think both of these things allowed me to show more technical side of me. And I think it also helps me show like how I'm bringing together finance and computer science, which are like 2 of my interests. So that's something you can keep in mind of how to bring together different interests of yours and how to relay those things in the additional information section. The other things I also elaborated on was like the research work I did with my professor. So I talked more in depth about that experience as well. And something I want to tell you guys about the additional information section is if you write something in there, make sure you're not mentioning it anywhere in your essays, or at least I would recommend you not to do so, because then they're going to be seeing it on your extracurricular list maybe, and then your additional information, and then essays, so it might get redundant, and it doesn't show a new side of you, which is what you should try to do, or really focus on like a specific personality of you, so it wouldn't do either of those things. So you should focus on avoiding situations like that. If you have an idea and you might have a way to work it for you, then go ahead. But personally, I wouldn't try to do that because like it didn't work for me at least. So keep that in mind. Like for Yale, one of my essays was about the Knowledge at Wharton High School Investment Competition, and so I didn't talk about that too much in depth in my additional information section. So that's basically something to keep in mind while doing the additional information section. And that's pretty much it for this video. So I hope to see you guys in the next video.